The story begins quietly, with experts taking a close look at Nevada's soil, listening carefully to farmers' observations and concerns about whether the land was even workable anymore. What they saw wasn't encouraging. The ground was dry, salty, and stubborn, the kind of soil most people would walk away from. Yet what followed would shock the entire agricultural world. When trucks first started dumping millions of bees into Nevada's desert soil, almost everyone thought it was the dumbest farming idea ever attempted. Social media exploded with videos of farmers literally pouring bees onto salt-covered ground that looked more like a lifeless wasteland than a farm. Comment sections filled with laughter, disbelief, and outrage. To many, it looked like madness. Local news stations jumped on the story, calling it a reckless experiment. Agricultural experts publicly criticized the farmers, labeling the effort animal cruelty. Neighbors shook their heads, convinced the farmers had finally lost their minds. Headlines mocked Nevada's crazy bee experiment, predicting it would fail spectacularly. But 1 month later, something unexpected happened. Those same bees became a critical part of Gilcrease orchard. They carried pollen between blossoms, fertilizing fruit trees more effectively than anything farmers had seen before. Suddenly, the people who had mocked Nevada's farmers were desperately trying to copy them, realizing they had completely misjudged an idea that was about to change agriculture forever. To understand why this mattered so much, you have to understand the crisis Nevada farmers were facing. By 2023, crop yields were collapsing. Traditional farming methods were failing under increasingly harsh desert conditions. But the biggest problem wasn't just the lack of water, it was the soil itself. Ancient lakebeds had left behind mineral deposits that made the soil highly alkaline. Regular crops couldn't survive, and farmers were spending fortunes trying to fix land that refused to cooperate. Yet one plant thrived where others failed: alfalfa. With deep roots and remarkable drought tolerance, alfalfa could survive Nevada's brutal conditions. Even better, alfalfa seeds were extremely valuable. They helped retain soil moisture and ensured future crops could survive droughts. But there was one major problem: alfalfa seeds only form when pollinated in a very specific way. Alfalfa flowers have a spring-loaded mechanism that must be triggered by the right pressure. Most bees, including honeybees, either couldn't trigger it or avoided it altogether because it was uncomfortable. Without proper pollination, farmers got beautiful purple fields, but almost no seeds. Thousands of dollars were lost every season, and something had to change. The answer came from Nevada's past. While digging through old agricultural research, Dr. Clara Martinez discovered a forgotten study from the 1970s. It described a native species called alkali bees, perfect pollinators for alfalfa that had lived in Nevada for thousands of years. Unlike honeybees, alkali bees lived alone, building underground nests in salty soil. What amazed Dr. Martinez was how these bees interacted with alfalfa flowers. Their size and weight triggered the flower's mechanism perfectly every time. They didn't avoid the snap, they thrived on it. But there was a problem. Alkali bee populations had collapsed decades earlier due to pesticides and habitat loss. To bring them back, farmers would need to recreate very specific conditions: salty soil, precise moisture levels, and underground stability. When Dr. Martinez suggested intentionally salting land and releasing millions of bees, most farmers laughed. Some hung up on her mid-sentence. Only a few desperate enough to risk everything agreed to try. One of them was farmer Bill Richardson. When he agreed to the experiment, he had no idea it would turn him into a viral sensation. News crews filmed as he prepared a 5-acre plot, loosening soil, installing underground moisture systems, and then covering everything in thick layers of salt. To outsiders, it looked like he was deliberately killing his land. Then came the bees. Trucks arrived carrying millions of alkali bees, which workers poured onto the salt-covered ground. Videos went viral instantly. Critics accused Bill of cruelty. Professors used the footage as an example of bad farming. Hate mail flooded in. But Bill and Dr. Martinez knew the truth wouldn't appear overnight. Beneath the surface, something extraordinary was happening. The bees didn't flee. They began digging. Each female tunneled through the salt crust, creating deep, perfectly shaped underground chambers. The salt helped regulate moisture, prevented parasites, and protected the larvae. What looked like a dead salt flat was becoming a massive underground bee city. Within weeks, the population began growing. The bees weren't just surviving, they were thriving. And soon, they reached the alfalfa fields. 3 weeks later, scientists noticed impossible patterns in flower activity. Cameras captured alkali bees triggering alfalfa flowers with flawless precision. Each bee pollinated up to 300 flowers a day, nearly 4 times more than honeybees, with almost 100% success. They worked longer hours, handled extreme heat, and traveled farther than expected. When harvest season arrived, the results stunned everyone. Bill's fields produced up to 1,850 pounds of seed per acre, more than double the state average. Some plots exceeded 2,000 pounds. With seed selling for $12 per pound, Bill earned millions more than previous years. Across Nevada, alfalfa seed production jumped by 40%. The state became a national leader. Universities that once mocked the experiment sent researchers. Other states rushed to copy the method, but failed. Without Nevada's exact soil chemistry, moisture control, and native bee genetics, their bees died or disappeared. Scientific studies later confirmed why. Nevada's alkali bee beds were self-sustaining, some operating for over 45 years. Individual beds housed millions of bees and pollinated hundreds of acres with minimal cost. Even more surprising, the bee beds improved biodiversity instead of harming it. What began as a joke became a $400 million industry. Nevada transformed from an agricultural punchline into a pollination powerhouse. All because farmers trusted a native species that had been there all along.